one of the main topics in the Classic WoW discussion is whether or not we should start from 1.1, and if so, if we want no changes at all, just some bug fixes, or maybe even just a content release with 1.12 talents. It scares me how easy people are convinced that 1.12 talents with progressive content release is the way to go, which is a big reason for me to create this video. Please hear me out. I would like to argue that 1.1 talents and balance is the way to go. I'm not saying it needs to be an exact copy including all the bugs, however, I wouldn't mind if it would be that way, but I think there are a few points to be made about 1.1 as a starting point. I know there are a lot of pros and cons, so I think it's appropriate to bring them all up. Let's start with the first point. Patch 1.1 or 1.2, depending on the region, is how it all began. We've been asking for a vanilla version of the game to relive how it all began. Most people who started playing in vanilla didn't even start at 1.12. They started somewhere in between 1.1 and 1.12. In order to relive those early days, it would as such only make sense to start from the beginning, as is 1.1. I, for one, started playing during 1.3. Most of my time in Vanilla WoW I spent on patches between 1.3 and 1.12. I remember the old talent trees more than I actually remember those from 1.12. I used to theory craft with a friend about the old talent trees. We went class by class discussing several specs. For me, that is the Vanilla WoW I remember. 1.12 might be the private server you all remember, but progression through the patches, old talent trees, old spells, adjusted numbers, all that is the real vanilla experience. I want to relive vanilla. I have no interest in reliving private servers vanilla. I want the real deal. By the way, did you know that 1.12 brought the infamous cross-server battlegrounds into the game? This brings me to the second point. It would give Blizzard a clear edge over private servers. Yes, it's an additional reason for people to quit playing on private servers. Blizzard has all the knowledge, so it would be easy for them to do this. On this point, I would also like to add that it would make sense for me if they would leave out re-implementing bugs into the game. That would probably be a lot of work anyway. While changing the numbers, the items, and the old talents wouldn't be as much work, especially since they have all their old patch notes anyway, something private servers didn't always have access to. And thus they never implemented it. Private servers, which were as Blizz-like as possible, have always had the most people playing. Nostalrius, for example. They went the extra mile. They implemented the old itemization, and they're of now still the most well-respected private server that has ever existed. That's why it would only make sense to me if we would start from 1.1. It's as Blizz-like as it gets, so it would probably attract the most players. One could argue that starting from 1.1 means we will have no diminishing returns, and that could probably ruin the game experience. While I wouldn't mind no diminishing returns, I can see why this is a valid point to make. However, I think Blizzard can leave out game-breaking things like that. We would just have to trust them, leaving the right things out and keeping the rest in. A third point I'd like to make is that having the old talent trees, the old spell numbers and the old itemization would also solve balance issues in early raids like Molten Core and Blackwing Lair, and even in dungeons. As we can see on the private servers, these raids are nowhere what they used to be. As most people actually never got past Blackwing Lair, it would make sense to create these raids as closely to the original version as possible. A last point I often hear is, it's a lot of work, which will all go to waste once a patch progresses. I think this is a false statement. I assume Blizzard will do some kind of fresh server rotation. Let me give you an example. Let's say Classic runs for 2 years. Then they will probably bring out TBC servers. At this point, a new cycle of vanilla servers could start, and they could start from 1.1 again, and then they can go through the patches. I think they can keep reusing the work, as long as there are fresh cycles in server release. That's about all I wanted to say, but I want to end with emphasizing a point. We only have one shot to do this right. I think it's more important than ever to let your voice be heard. And remember, do we want to relive the private server vanilla, or do we want to relive the real, the authentic vanilla experience as we all claim to remember? Have a nice day.